Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Amy. Thank you very, very much for coming to our program for the second time, and this time to share all of the new things that that had happened over the past couple of years, and celebrating your new book, another book on leadership that a lot of experts out there say is a rare sin book on leadership. So I am intrigued to know how did you do that? All right.
That sounds good. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm so glad we're talking again.
And Amy, yes, you still haven't come to our country yet. And if you decide to travel here, it's
Yes.
very nice here, right? So my family would love to see you in person and have a
Yes.
cup of tea together. Let's talk about life, about leadership. That would be fantastic. So put it on your bucket list and then let's
Yes.
make it
Y-
happen in the early
Yeah,
years.
you're the
Okay?
first person I'll call, certainly.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
we've
for
been
sure.
seeing so many, guests on our show who come to Vietnam with their friend, with the family, and one
Yeah.
day, sure, one day we're gonna see you and your family here.
Yeah. Yes. That would be lovely.
Hey, and for the taste of our culture, Amy is very honored of our audience to have you share a little bit about who you are and the work you do for us. Would you please do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, over my decades of career in primarily human resources, I began to see a connection in terms of my deep interest and curiosity in why people lead the way they do. And I think we can all say we've had leaders that, ooh, I really like the way they handle that, and some that, ooh, I don't want to do that, and some that fall in the middle. And so, this has come to have me thinking about what what is the measurement of leadership? Is there a measurement of leadership? And we've come to know leadership as some things related to visibility because that's how we grow up in our roles. And so the work that I do today is, primarily, partnering with CEOs and their heads of HR, because that's the work I've been doing and continue to do, in building leaders for the business they're becoming, not just the one they've been. And I do that through a variety of means of, working with them on things that they're challenged with or a growth mode that they're in, and helping them really discover, the effectiveness of their leadership team and ways in which we can strengthen it. So that has been the focus of my work through, various means. And then obviously I love writing.
Uh-huh.
Um, I enjoy the process of, just the ideas that come to my head through the experiences I have with people of like, what's that? What's like underneath that? And so
Mm.
that became unseen leadership over my years. My first book, Growth Point, is more in the, as personal development of how you make the most of your learning experiences. And I always knew there was going to be a second. I just, wanted time. And so as I began to write more about, the work that I do and my own experiences, this is where unseen leadership came to life for me. So
When you say it's a second, I no doubt for me it's going to be the 20s coming in soon also.
yeah, it's like, people, when's your next one? I'm like, oh, can I have a breather, please? Can I have a joy in talking about this one?
Yeah. Before we jump into the book, let's our
Yeah.
audience to know a little bit more about you, the curiosity, how you get to ideas, and just say when you ideas come, you dive into it a little bit to understand, and why that ideas come, right? And bring me to when you were little. Okay, when I was little, I always wanted to become an astronaut because my life, we were so poor in the poor community. One night we had electricity, the next night we did not have anything. I couldn't see
Yeah.
things far. So on those nights that the moon, you can see the moon, right? So it's beautiful, and I wanted to go there. So my first dream was to become an astronaut, flying to the moon. And now life it's taken me to a different path. And for you, when you were little, what was your dream about the future work that Amy Clark's going to do when she growing up?
When I think about that, because, and when I remember when I was little, people would ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, I had things in mind, but I was more interested in really observing other people. And it was less about what I wanted to do and more about what other people are doing. Some of it was nosy because I was a little nosy girl. I was always nosy into what people were doing. That was my thing. But I did, 'cause, as I watched my mom, I'm like, wow, she's taking care of us 7 children, and she's finding her own way, as a woman, as somebody who wants to have some other ways to contribute, and then my dad, and like always wondering, what does he do all day, and it wasn't so much, that I learned about what they did and like, oh, I want to do that. It was more to just learn and take it in. And ever since I can remember, my mom has described me as somebody as just she hasn't used the word curious, but she says you're just so observant, you're interested in people,
Mm.
you like to take pieces and parts and figure out how to put them together, not like a builder engineer, but more of like thought, right? And but also learning that, as my dad died when I was young. And I've learned so much more about him after he passed than when I was with him, in that people would say, you're just like dad, and like this calm, assertive. And so that's how I thought about when I was young and how I think about today. But, things that came up for me is, come from a family of singers. So let me be a singer. Sang in
Mm.
church, let me do that. Let me be in musicals, all those things, right? And then somewhere along the way, it was childhood education. And ooh, that's something. And I think probably because people were talking about it. And I'm like, okay, maybe I lean into that. All the way to, ooh, I think I want to become an accountant. It was all over the place, really all over the place.
Mm.
So, but I think probably, where that accountant came from is I learned, because I seem to feel naturally lean into taking pieces and parts and analyzing them and trying to come to something and providing solution. Like the business part came to me, right? So yeah, I just had this wonderment, I guess, as a child of just learning from people and less about I want to be this, um, and more about taking in from other people to learn more about me. I wouldn't have described it that way, obviously, when I was little. It was just more of a thing, right?
Mm.
And so I love that question you asked, because all of us can look back at our childhood and reflect on how we thought, and then we can kind of say, all right, that was my natural tendency. How has it built who I am today? And do you still lean into those things?
Mm. So when your mom say you have the interest in observing people, right? And if you can look back at all the journeys of observing other people at different level, different, like ethnic, different, like ages and stuff, what's the common themes that you see that interesting enough from other people that you can apply to your life, apply to your thinking, apply to your work? Amy?
Yeah, yeah. I, thinking about, I mean, there are a few things, but the first thing that came to mind is we're all working to figure ourselves out continuously,
Mm.
and and asking questions. And I think we ask questions, and some of us close those questions early. Some of us sit with the questions. So I do find that we all have this natural um, ability to be curious. We all do as human beings. We see something new, we want to explore it, right? And so I think that's the common thing is people are curious, but there's different levels of curiosity and where you take it, right? So I think that is the common thing, that it's like we're still trying to figure ourselves out, and then we try to figure other people out or situations out. That's just this natural tendency that I found.
Uh, and
Yeah.
from people in general, and later through the works, decades of work, your curiosity on people starting to be more on leadership, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, I think because it's all comes on to what we're rewarded. So let me um, say this. As we get into leadership roles, um, it's less about curiosity. It becomes less about curiosity on how I can think long term, and more of curiosity of what will so and so think of this. What will so and so think of me in this moment? What will be people be saying about me? How can I make sure I'm coming off very confident, right? What's my presence? Curiosity more comes from the external validation of other people, is what I find when you're kind of, because you're wanting to prove yourself. There's nothing wrong with it, because it's a natural thing as us as human beings.
Okay.
When we think about our instincts that we're born with, this instinct of safety, preservation of ourselves, that fires up particularly early in our leadership careers, because that protection comes to say, all right, how do I need to look in this moment? And that's the curiosity tie, because we're curious more about other people and then how we come across to other people. And so as we do move along in leadership, broaden our scope, increase our level, all of those things, it's important for us to realize where that instinct to protect ourselves, when it is firing up in ways that is not contributing to what you need and what other people need from you. But I see it more in terms of curiosity of how am I coming across, and 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 listen, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We want to impress, we want to have an impact. The problem becomes when we focus so much on leading from that, we are not seeing the environment around us. We're more on a performative side of how can I make this look good versus what is the long-term impact I'm going to have here, because those questions aren't always easy, and so to answer, and sometimes the way you present yourself is not going to be well received, and so you need to really have a solid foundation within yourself to say, I know this isn't the popular thing right now, but I also know this is something that people need to hear. So, those are things that, and again, in my career, when I would observe it, like I said, even when I was younger, I certainly didn't talk the way I just did. I didn't connect it the way I just did. It was more of saying, okay, I guess that's how it is, because I did the same thing. And I still do some of that. I think we all do. And so as I began to evolve as a leader, and seeing, what worked and what didn't, had me realize, we need to expand our view of what curiosity can be for us specifically.
When you say that, realize what worked and what didn't work, right? So how did you do to get into that stage, to start to realize, what make that stage happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it does come from experience for sure. And I think the important thing that we need to do on a regular basis is reflect. We often get through the hard things and say, oh, thank God I'm over that, I'm moving on. Or the celebration, great, let's move on to the next. To realize what works and what didn't is the reflection. Okay, this was a great success. First, what made it a success? But what things had to have gotten challenging? What was it about that? And the other thing, fortunate thing I had in the roles I was in within HR, because I work very closely with leaders on the day-to-day work they did with their teams. And so the one thing you want to ask yourself, what keeps repeating? What do I have to keep talking about? What do we need to keep revisiting? Wait a minute, I thought we made this decision. So those are the signals that tell you, you know what? Something isn't working. Something in the way I either communicated it, the way we solved it, the way somebody heard it, or within the structure of what you have isn't giving people the ability to do what you need them to do. And so my role gave me great visibility into that. And so I think that, and anybody can do those things of just what came up today that I felt like we're talking about this again. Things like that. I think those are just really important reflective questions, because it does help you realize what works and what doesn't for you as a leader, and then for the people that count on you.
Yeah, because when you say it sounds simple, right? But that simple sometimes is very complex, because a lot of people not being able to see it, and a lot of
Yes.
people still spending time to reflect, but didn't get anything. The next day things gonna happen the same old way again, and they ask the question about what seems to be repeating in here, and the next day it's
Yeah.
going to be 15 again. How did you break that cycle and recreate a new Amy Clark that go into the new territory of your life?
Yeah. And I'd like to take it from the personal stance for a second because,
Okay.
all of my life, and I've led this into the work I do, all of my life, I've struggled with things related to my health, whether, it was my weight, how I felt, all of these things. And for so long it felt, and again, wouldn't describe it this way then. It was like this mask and this covering over me, because I'm very good at faking the smile. I'm doing good, right? I became
Mhm.
very good at that because this armor I had in front of me. And um and so the whole thing is I knew I wasn't feeling right about myself. I knew I wasn't meeting the potential I needed to personally and professionally, and I just didn't like the way I felt inside. And I didn't like the way I looked outside. And it really affected my ability to show up in a variety of ways. But to your point on making things complex, people say, well, losing weight is easy. Eat less and burn more. Um, think that is the scientific way
Mhm.
of doing it. But as we all know, we're human beings
It's not.
and we have flaws.
Uh-huh.
And so for so long, I tried to remove my flaws, ignore them, restrict myself, um, and really define. I kind of put this myself in this box of this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do.
Oh.
And that sounds simple, right? Do what's in the box, don't do what's outside the box, right? Very
Mhm.
simple. Very hard in practice, like anything in life. And so I learned over time, and particularly in these last few years, that, we tend to make the easiest thing the most complex, right? We do
Mhm.
that because we are given restriction. Do this, don't do that. And that's not how the human condition is built. We're not built in that way. Um, and so it was truly, this way of saying, what do I want my life to be? What do I actually want to feel? I
Mhm.
want to feel strong. I want to feel like I can go up and down the stairs. I can go down the stairs in the morning after I wake up and not feel sore. I want to feel like I can bring my groceries in 4 bags at a time. I want to feel like I could go for a long walk and not even think about whether my heart can take it, right? Those are things that, it's very practical terms, right?
Mhm.
I'm just getting down. That's what I want to feel. And so then I connected it to, okay, what is going to help me do that? And what's going to help me do that is how I fuel myself and how I take care of myself. And so it wasn't you can't eat this, you can't eat that, or you need to eat this, right? I led from a place of how I wanted to feel and what I wanted to experience. And over time, that has influenced my choices. But it's also allowed me to say, there are things that I enjoy
Mhm.
eating
Uh-huh.
that I'm not going to stop eating, right? Because it makes me feel this sense of joy. And so what are the components that I need to bring and put in place? Like again, these pieces of a puzzle that come together that over time help me feel the way I want to feel and get me to experience what I want to experience. And so, I and it's not easy again. It's still not easy. And it's all about our choices. And, you know, um, and I found the things that really light me up and bring out something in me that I don't know that I've ever felt in my lifetime. This feeling of um, inner competition. I'm competing with myself,
Mhm.
where I felt like I was always competing with other people. I'm competing with myself and how I can be this certain percent better even 1% better every day. or that 1% better the next time, which compounds. So from the personal standpoint and using that from the leadership lens, we think about leadership, you can do this, you can't do that. You need to focus here, not here. It's like we're given these either or. Both can be true, right? And, so both can exist, and you can think about how you toggle between both. So leadership isn't this, it's one thing or another. It's a combination of the pieces in you that when they come together and what you want to feel, the impact you want to have as a leader, come together that start to help you make more deliberate choices and not allow the things that, keep you, hold you back, keep you there. So we can get into some of the tactics in a minute, but that kind of just that's really what made it come together for me as I think about my personal experience of, it just felt for so long that these conditions of either or and this idea of feeling limited in that really affects your psyche, first of all, but it does impact your decisions that you make about yourself and other people.
Wow. Conversation like this is for us to unearth some transformative moments. And when you said the word realize, I want to bring that realization onto, a picture for our audience to maybe they have a different games on their hands, there are different objectives they want to get. And most of us are operating on the limiting thinking, like you said earlier, is that do this and don't do that, and it will get us to where we want to do, right? And you mentioned about attaching your feelings onto this. It's a reverse the way that you think. And the question for me I have for you is that we all human beings, we are feeling machines, right? So we operate based on feelings. Why are we losing that feelings for ourselves and starts to be so harsh on us and I say do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, and you get what you want.
From a business and leadership standpoint, I think sometimes, and what I have found, and I've done this myself, when I focus on feelings, things take longer, and I need to move. I need to get that, just move. Here are the steps: A, B, C, D. Right? Again, we're trying to make it simple. We're trying to remove the complexity to it. But what happens is when you start to do that and put people in a linear, go from A, B, C to D, what you're not considering is all the things that are happening in the circle around those steps that could cause B to be like, wait a minute, this isn't the right thing. Right? And so the whole idea of the feeling, right? It's important for us to feel emotionally connected to what we do, whether it is a personal thing that we're doing or in business. And there's different levels of that, right? We all feel like we want to have an impact, that we're doing something that makes us feel good, or we're doing it for a purpose. Some people arrive to work because they're doing it for a purpose to provide for their family and for the things they want for their family. And then on top of that, it could be, I'm here because, yeah, I want to provide for myself and my family, but you know what? I want to put my stamp on something. And how does that feel? And so you said it. I mean, we have this, we're feeling machines. And I think often we look to shut that down because it can we believe it slows something down, or it puts too much into something where we just need to go, right? We just need to go. And so there is a balance here, right? There is a balance because there's this analysis that can happen when you have 10 people in a room all sharing their opinion, their passion on something, right? You want to hear those things. Unseen leadership is about being that person in the room to say, okay, here's what I've heard. Here's the common thread that I heard on this. How do you all see it? Interrupting the pattern of all of this to kind of bring the room to center to say, okay, what have we decided from this conversation? Right? What is important to us from this conversation? That's what an unseen leader does, because what happens is people are fired up on, putting their feelings, which are important, but bringing those feelings together, bringing those emotions, bringing that connection together into something that is worthwhile, that all feel like, I get why I'm doing this. I
Wow.
get why I'm doing this. But I think, again, we get into this mode of execution. And
Mm.
so, execution without the why. Yeah, things might get done, but over time, people forget what it's for.
Mm.
And that impacts performance over time. It certainly does.
And that's come back to your question, why things keep repeating here, right? Because we want to get things done and we will
Yeah.
forget about, things in the middle. And then
Yeah, we
things
do.
got
Yep.
done later on, it repeats again. It's just different forms.
Well, and that's the thing. I think what I found too is, I've been caught in this trap myself, move, move, move. And then, 3 months down the line, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Now I have to rework this because we didn't take the moment to consider. And, and I'm not talking, let's make sure we're defining this. When I'm talking feelings and emotions, I'm talking, again, what you want to experience and the impact you want to have. Okay. I think leaders get uncomfortable with, well, I don't want to talk about to my people about their feelings and emotions. I'm not supposed to do that. I'm not saying about their personal or their deep emotions. What I'm saying is you can simply ask somebody you're working on a project, hey, what's your outlook on this? How are you seeing it?
Mm.
What are you most excited about? And what's on your mind that might be weighing on you? That's what I mean by feeling and emotion. Like, what do you want to shift for yourself when this is when this is completed? What do you want to see?
Mm.
Right? You don't need to necessarily use what do you want to feel, and use those words. You're getting to it by talking about their perspective of a situation.
Mm.
Because when you start asking those questions, people start bringing up maybe things that are keeping them from moving as fast as they want to, or whether they're bottlenecks or things that are like opening the way and you want to do that more, And so we need to take a beat, and that's getting curious, and that's also empathy. Empathy is seeing the outlook of others before your own. And when you
Mm.
simply ask people, like, what's your outlook? What's the outlook of the week? We have a lot going on, and
Mm.
that in and of itself helps frame that for people so they feel like, okay, I know by Friday I want to get this done, and this is how I want to feel about it. This is
Mm.
this is the impact I want to have. And so you're connecting people to that.
So the unseen leadership is something that you realize after your journey of transforming yourself from moving from the tactical um, strategy of doing your day onto putting the feeling and letting the feeling leading and designing the way that you want to do in life, right? Or you came with the unseen leadership first and then you start to see it reconnecting to the way that you transform yourself, and which one comes first?
Well, unseen leadership is the part of is leadership. So
Ah.
it comes with it, right? It's not something you I would say not something like a tangible or thing you all of a sudden discover. And
Ah.
you're never done building what that is. So when we think of unseen leadership, right, it's uncovering what others can't or won't, right? It's being the one to get beneath the surface of things, right?
Mm.
It's naming what we're avoiding in the
Mm.
room. And it's also thinking about the impact you have after you've left a conversation. Does your influence last? Does your influence grow as other people contribute, right? How are you helping other people grow? Um, and so, because again, we think of leadership often as these visible things that are on the surface,
Mm.
um, because they are quick hits. Okay, our monthly dashboard looks great, trending way we need to be trending. And so you focus on that. Um, what's coming up in 6 months or a year that we need to be talking about? Will this trend continue? Right? Or you're walking into an executive meeting and you're feeling like, okay, I need to have executive presence here. I need to make sure I got my words right and this right and this right. And when you're leading from that, you are not listening to what the room or what other people are saying. You're just not. I mean, when you're so focused on how you're showing up, so
Mm,
polished, following your talk track, you know, your mind just closes to the interaction that's happening in the room.
mm,
I'm not saying you don't go in there feeling confident and doing a great job. What
mm.
you want to go in there is to say, what is my role in moving this room into a conversation? Right?
Is
Sorry,
it?
my puppy is starting to
Yeah,
come
bring
up
your
to me.
puppy to say hello. Hey.
He's normally fairly quiet, just laying right next to me, but for some reason he does this when I start to get. There's Max. There's
What
Max.
is his
When I
name?
Max,
Hey,
Max. He's a.
Max. Oh, we love to see Max also.
You know what happens when I start talking with my hands and I get excited? He senses that in me and he comes up. It's like, ooh, can we play? So that's what happens.
We want to see him also because we want to see like the
Come on,
unseen
bud.
things seen, right? So
Come over here. Come here. You want to come up?
hey,
Do you want to see? Let's
hey
get you in the
Max.
let's
Wow,
get you in the
hello.
podcast, buddy.
Wow. Hello, hello. Hello from Vietnam. Hello.
All right, you go lay
Um,
down, bud.
yeah. Go back to your my question earlier. I asked you, like, when you write unseen leadership is a byproduct from your transform journey,
Yeah.
or when you start writing it, then you see the ability to to apply it and start the transformation for yourself. Which one comes first?
Um, well, I will tell you when I was writing it, I didn't have unseen leadership, the term in my mind.
Oh.
Okay. It was more of like what was in my mind was interrupt your instincts from the beginning because I would talk through some things and say, you know, we need to interrupt our instinctual reactions or the things that we've always known, our expertise. We need to interrupt those things or feeling like we need to be certain, right? And so I began to write. And as I began to write, the word unseen came up. Like we need to get beneath the surface of what we don't see what others don't see. And so it was interesting. The transformation came during the writing process of this is unseen leadership. Like, and especially because we think about leadership, we need to be seen, we need to be
Mm,
visible. That is not the focus of a leader. The focus of a leader is how do we bring out the brilliance in other people that they may not see in themselves? How do I bring out things in myself that I'm not seeing?
mm,
So that kind of happened through the writing process.
uh,
But because, the one thing that's so interesting is we learn that we need to trust our instincts, trust your gut, right? And so my notion is how do you, and we need to start interrupting that because I have found that is what's holding us. That's what's
uh,
keeping us from really what the future is requiring of us now, especially because, of all the uncertainty we have, the different things that are going on in the world, it's requiring us to think about how do we remain relevant in that. And
uh,
that's building ourselves in our leadership and questioning the things that we've come to know that have been successful for us.
because if we have before we have the term blind spots, right? So blind spot is we can use mirror, we can see things that we cannot see,
Yeah.
in the blind area, right? But then the unseen is like something that is not visible by our eyes. It's not in even in
Yeah.
the blind spot, so I cannot use a mirror to see it. I cannot, ask somebody to see it. How can I see the unseen in my leadership way or the way that other people is leading their team, leading their lives? Maybe.
Yeah. And first it's awareness. I mean, it's asking questions. I
Mm,
mean, and being open to getting to know yourself more. And that can be through various assessments that you do or conversations you have with people.
mm,
So for instance, what I like to do with people, and I ask for people that count on what I do, that work on my team, we do this together. We just, what are some things that you see as my strength that I might not be seeing?
mm.
Where do you see are my opportunities, right? And so, and and then I actually did this exercise recently because I was thinking about my zone of genius.
Yo, what?
And my zone of genius.
Zone of genius.
Have you
Okay.
heard that term?
You first. You're the first.
Yeah, there's a book. There's a book on that. Leap. I think it's called Leap. But if you can give me a minute, I'm just going to let Max outside out
Sure,
at the
sure.
door. Yeah, sorry. The zone of genius is about it. I was asking myself these questions of what did I do recently where I said to myself, man, I could do that again and again. I'd like to do that. Give me that again, right? And then I think about people that I serve, that I work with. What have they said to me that they've said thank you? When have they said thank you? What did I do? You know, and then I went back to conversations where people said something and I try to get verbatim. Like, you know, somebody actually said to me, you seem to see the dichotomy in things, like opposite truths, and helping us get to, how we move through that, right? That's stuff like that. And then obviously you look at those things that drain you, like that you're excellent at, but they drain you. And so, like I was saying earlier, like there are things that I'm really good at, but I felt like it just wasn't giving me the energy and the challenge that I
Mm.
need in my life right now. So it did some good for me then. That's kind of an awareness thing. So I think that's the first thing when you think about how you kind of see what's unseen. It's asking yourself those questions. And then, the thing that I do with teams, and it's through the care activator that's in the book. It's the leadership activator. So it's based on these four principles of curiosity, adaptability, resilience, and empathy.
Mm.
And when you lead from those places, okay, and practice, the ways, the lenses of each of those, um, you begin to bring up things that otherwise wouldn't be. So, for instance, in curiosity, right? Um, we all get enticed by the shiny object. Oh, this looks fun to do. Or,
Mhm.
oh, this seems to be a trend out here. Let's go after that, right? And it's easy to do because we feel like we can have some impact there. But to bring up the unseen is like, so is how does this relate to what we're trying to do long term? Is there a
Uh,
connection to that? Because sometimes we just go at the shiny thing because we know how to do it. We know we'll get results, but is it truly what we're trying to go for?
this
Right?
one?
Is it what we're trying to go for in the long term
Okay.
by focusing here? So
Mhm.
be careful of the shiny objects. Like, how do you cover that up a bit to see what's outside of it? And it's through those questions of how does it serve what we all agreed to where we need to be in 3 years? And by focusing here, where are we placing less focus now? And are we okay with that?
Mm.
Right? And so, oh wait, we're going to have to put this off and put this off. Well, hold it. We know that those things are important. Or yeah, we can. So that's an example of it, of when you lead from that curious place of helping bring up, people are so excited about something, right? It's not meant to slow things down or diminish the value. It's meant to expand the thinking in the room. And that is
Mm.
your role. Okay. Um, Resilience, for example. Um, we see it as this thing of keep pushing ourselves, persistence. Certainly, it's one of those things you want to see and feel like your limit. What are your
Uh,
limits, right? Resilience is also having a true understanding of what not to do, what not to pursue. Because by pursuing it, you are actually fracturing your resilience level because you're adding more than what you are meant to do. And
mm.
so that is bringing up something that you might not have seen before, right? So each one has a role in surfacing kind of what's underneath, the common things of leadership, of execution, results. All those things do matter, but if you don't look at these four over time, execution results will falter, and you won't see the growth that you're looking to see because you're looking at it from a short term optic view. Let's just go get results versus a Are these the right results we need to see? Are we going after the right thing?
Hmm. Sorry, because you saw me up and down. I write
Yeah,
a lot of notes in here, and
glad. Good.
I wrote that curiosity, empathy, and resilience. And what's the fourth one?
Curiosity, adaptability, resilience, and
Adaptability.
empathy. Yep.
Okay. Wow. Really, I really want to say thank you for bringing up the resilience, for doing the things that we should not do. That
Yeah.
is something also I didn't hear before. And I'm like a dog following the bones and trying to do everything to get to the bone. And when you share about that, it made me feel like some bone is not worth following. Maybe there's too many other dogs already chasing after that. Maybe
Yeah.
I might need to go somewhere else to do that. So how did you come up with having that piece of wisdom
Related
and
to
put it onto
resilience.
and then put it
Yeah.
onto the NC leadership?
Well, yeah, and I will say it's been in my health journey over the last few years, actually, because I joined a community gym 2.5 years ago,
Uh,
and was to get stronger, right? And then I started to get this like, ooh, I feel really, really good. And they host these fitness competitions, okay?
uh,
And so part of the fitness competitions, are doing things that physically I can't do because I have a knee replacement. There's certain things that I cannot do. I mean, I could, but it's probably not safe. Let's just put it that way. I'd probably hurt myself. But me, I was like, I'm going to push myself to do it. I'm going to push myself to be able to do this one thing. And it was actually stepping over a box, right? I'm going to push myself to step up on a 24-inch box and step back down.
uh,
And so focused on that I got aggravated. I got upset that I couldn't do it. This fear kept coming over me. And actually, my coach, and the other thing I wanted to be able to do was run. Okay.
mm, mm.
And so it's like, and so my coach says to me, she says, sometimes it's realizing, what your strengths are and playing to those. We've heard that, playing to your strengths.
Uh-huh.
And once you realize, listen, you're not going to be a marathon runner. That's not who you're meant to be. And I came to that conclusion. You're meant to be strong. You're meant to be able to carry like physical weight to take care of yourself. You're meant to have your body so strong that when you're 80 years old, you're mobile. When you're 85, you're mobile. Right? And so what was happening in that moment is I was comparing myself to the other people in that gym who are more fit than me that were doing all these things. I'm like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that. And that was a moment where it's like, okay, resilience meant what by focusing on the things that I really shouldn't be doing because it wasn't safe for me.
Mm.
I was cracking my resilience in other areas where I was strong. I wasn't as strong there because the whole idea, the mental thoughts that came through my mind, and I was pushing my body physically too much to try to do it, that it was affecting me in my strong areas. And so that's an example of stop trying that. It's okay. You can't be everything,
Yeah.
you know? And and it just and so I think that whole thing of that experience had me realize, as I was thinking about resilience and unseen leadership, and this whole idea of push, 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 um, is exhausting. You know,
No.
you can say yourself, push yourself, okay, you can do this. That's one thing. But when you do it at the expense of your own well-being, that's not healthy.
Amy, I think thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we've been talking a lot about that and the whole notion of the motivational, like where people go into states and talking about pushing the boundary, nothing is
Mm.
impossible, and da da
Yeah.
da 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 da. And those are like you say earlier, it's a shiny things, and people look at the shiny things and say, "Oh, he can do it, I can do it." But then we are born differently. They have things doing differently, and maybe behind all of those shining things, that individual has a lot of pains, a lot of health issue
Yeah.
that they never share to anyone. So
Yeah.
maybe the unseen leadership is the way for us. If we can build that capacity for us to be able to see beyond the shining objects in here, to look in the things that not shown, and I
I
start to
love
see
that.
like that. Okay, maybe like
Yeah.
looking differently, right? Yeah, and and again, so it's they look at if you look at the world the way that is orchestrated at the moment, is a lot of people fall into the trap of those shining objects, right?
We do.
Yeah, the money, the title, the
Yes.
whatever, the beautiful
Yeah.
cars, the big house, right? And then because of that, we keep chasing and keep running the hamster wheels and keep exhausting ourselves, never be happy, right?
Yeah.
So when you write the unseen leadership, what is that you want the readers, the managers, the leaders, whoever reading the book, to take away a few points that they can, become if they really practice all the things that you share in the book.
Yeah. First, all those things you just shared is, going after the shiny objects. That's a human response.
Mm,
Okay. And we're not wrong. We're not bad people. We're not, that's just our human response. So everybody has that. So my
mm,
first thing is that just know when it comes up and notice that. And notice if it is serving what you want for yourself. And just because the person next door to you is chasing after those doesn't mean that you need to. What helps you be settled in your life? It's
mm,
important to understand that, because when you understand that, you understand what helps you be settled in your leadership. And I think that's the first thing, is just human response. It's natural. It's going to continue to come up. Don't try to fix that. Don't try to say, I'm going to stop doing that, because you're just going to feel defeated. Okay. Allow it to come up, notice it, and choose. Okay, I want that car. Okay, go ahead and get the car, right? Or I want to get that promotion. Go for it. But know why you're doing it. Because you know what? I know I can have a big impact on a bigger part of this company. I have all these ideas and it's just firing me up. Yes, go for that. But to go for the sake of, I want to have some status here and feel like, and just that symbol for you. Everybody has their own things that motivate them. I'm not, you know, um, crushing on anything with that. I think everybody has their own thing. I think it's important to know why you're doing it, though, and is it in service of who you are.
mm,
Um, and so I think that's one of the main things. The other thing is that, you know, um, to have deeper awareness of yourself helps you to have deeper awareness of other people, and you lead better. You lead. You're able to see things in other people too. So when you were really taking a hard look at, so for instance, I'm working with a leader right now who keeps using the word, I need to feel more confident. I need to be more confident. We hear that a lot from people, but it's
mm.
more than that. What does confidence mean to you? Where does it come from for you? Who's given you that definition? Someone else or you? Is that what you want it to be? Right? You start to learn those things about yourself, similar to the shiny object. You're in better position to coach your people in that way too. When somebody says, I just don't feel confident about presenting this. Okay. What does confidence mean to you? Like, to be confident, what is that for you?
Ah,
What do you want to be the end result after you present? What do you want people to know, understand, right? And you know, in those conversations, people begin to know themselves, get to know themselves more,
mm,
and then you're helping them. So I think it's one of these things, as you read the book, think about it in terms of you first,
ah,
because that's where leadership starts. Get to know yourself. Because once you work the practices in that book for you, you see how you can work that for your team.
You have met a lot of great leaders or read a lot about great leaders. Is there any example of the one that you can easily see that he or she is having the unseen leadership, mastery inside of that individual?
Yeah, some of the best that I've seen actually make their pauses visible. What I mean by that, they're hearing something in a room, right? And you can tell they have their immediate reaction in their head and they want to spit it out. But some of the most exceptional leaders I see actually sometimes physically take a minute and take a breath. Some say, you know, I really want to, talk through what you just said there because it's really, it's connecting to what I'm thinking about over here, right? Or can you tell me more? I want to hear about how you see, that could play out for us. Oh, I'm excited to hear that. Or, I know you said that, but I also know we've talked about this being important. So how do you see the two working together, right? So especially if there's something you disagree with, there's a way to do that. I've seen the exceptional leaders just take a beat before assuming, before judging. Because when you go and do that, right, you're closing the room. When you take a minute, get some perspective, get further understanding, it doesn't mean you can't state your position and make a decision. It just shows that you're taking all of those things into account before you deliver it. And people need that from you. They want that. And so, and who knows, something might come up that changes your mind. So, those are things that I've seen, just take a pause.
Take a
Take a minute.
pause. Yeah. Wow. I think there's a lot of commonality between the unseen leadership and what we are working on in the newness framework that we're working on, the newness intelligence. Because when you mentioned earlier, it's about, the first step is to notice, right? Notice, slow down, notice what else that you haven't seen in there, what else that you could do that you're not yet. Notice the feelings of other people, notice the other people, and notice what you can apply into your life first. When you read that book and then before, because leadership takes from there. So when we start to dive into our conversation with experts around the world last year, your conversation also, we start to try to see what is this conversation leading us to. Because the people that we have on our show are really amazing people. They're trying to make the best for the world. They're trying to bring all of their intellectual and their experience to help making other people getting better. So what make them different? What make them so exceptional like that? And one by one by one by one, we start to see they are the people who are never afraid of change. They're never afraid of change. They're always leaning into change, whether or not changing from organization, community, the teamwork, the teams or themselves. And they start to work it out. They try to find a formula that can work for them. Then they show that formula for other people, right? And it's like a practice. You start doing little by little, little by little, and then you get the muscle of being able to see newness in life. And in those newness, there are opportunity, there's a possibility, of course, the challenge and setbacks, but there's always the learning opportunity in there. And this time we also, in the one unit, is the letter N, is the letter where we name is that notice one thing every day that is new.
Yeah.
And in this conversation, you share something new for me, like the zone of genius. As I wrote in there, I will have a good time thinking about that. Of course, right?
Yeah.
And your mom, in this conversation, your mom, you mentioned about your mom saying that you seem to observe a lot about other people. You talk about noticing. That's the same. You see? So you have that intelligence inside of you already, the ability to look at things, to see things, and later on to apply all those lessons toward yourself, toward your your learning and the lessons that can apply into your life, right? So if you could share some things that can help people to improve their ability to notice you know, because I have eyes. There's so many things in front of me. What is that worth for me to notice?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna be brain overloading with so much of information to be noticing. So, how do you do that?
Well, for me,
Uh-huh.
um, I I like to think about the cost of not noticing. I know that's a negative way to think, but because I just know my tendencies, I know me, and so for me, it's like, you know, if I don't take a minute to think about what new came up today, right?
Uh-huh.
What's something new that I'm noticing? Um, I'm doing myself a disservice and the people around me. And that does compound. And all of a sudden you find yourself, whoa, I feel really behind and nobody likes to feel behind. Or I feel like I'm not making the contribution, the impact. I don't feel good about the work I'm doing. I don't feel challenged. And so for me, sometimes it's the cost because that creates an emotional connection for me. Because again, that's just been my life experience of, of whether I've had loss or I've had, where I felt like I deserved a promotion or a raise and I didn't get one, or, things like that. I attach myself to that, and I try to rewire, but I've accepted who I am. And so that works for me to say, what's the cost of not noticing?
What's the cause of no noticing?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a number. It
Uh-huh.
could be, well, you know what? If I don't notice new things, how can I bring up new ideas? And if I don't bring up new ideas, people may not seek me out. And if people don't seek me out, I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to see myself in the role I want to see myself in, or I'm not going to see the success I want to see. And what's that going to cost me as a person?
Hmm.
Um, so there's that way too. And there's also the way to say, think about the impact you've had on noticing before and let that energy move you. Like when I noticed this the last time, man, it really changed somebody's trajectory. And
Mhm.
I loved that feeling and I want it again.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
the feeling of, like seeing things repeatedly happen.
Yeah.
And now you
Yeah.
use the lens of
Yeah.
newness to revert it. Hey, not going to happen again or happen
Yeah.
less frequent
Yeah.
next time. Yeah. And you look at you, all the change happened that you're more vibrant, you enjoy, you
Yeah.
bring the feelings into what you do, designing your life based on the feelings that you attach at the end of what you
That's
do.
right.
Yeah, and let it lead in you. And you look at the world, the same objective, but look at the new lens with something new, some twisted in there that, they give you, a tremendous result. Another book to show the world, to share your ideas. And if you pick one chapter in that book, and I know it's not fair, right? But I have to ask, if you pick a chapter in the book that you want to share with our audience now, and so what is that chapter about and why
Hmm.
you pick that chapter?
Well, uh, I'm going to kind of cheat and say it's the introduction, not the chapter, if that's
Okay,
okay.
absolutely. What is that?
Oh,
Why you pick the
only,
introduction?
yeah, only because it's the basis of the book. And it's a very, it's an experience that helps me lead myself and I can share it. It was my first executive leadership team meeting. I was doing a presentation and facilitating a conversation, and it was in their big boardroom. So when you picture a boardroom table, long table, these leather chairs, and the people around me, um, all in their suits, and I had looked up to every single one of them. Like, man, they must know what they're doing to get where they know how to do things. So that was in my mind.
Hmm.
And what was also in my mind is, do I belong here? So I wasn't a member of that executive leadership team, but the role I was in, I was presenting results from a culture survey
Ah,
to get some discussion of the team and discuss what it means for our leadership, for those in the room and for leadership in general at the company. And so I was very nervous, obviously. I came
Okay.
in what I felt was my power suit. I had my, like, really this really bright, like this red, suit, and good. Like, I was all outside, like, how am I'm going to stand up straight. I'm going to do all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
I've got my notes. I've got my slides. I'm going to stand up at the front. I'm going to own this room. But underneath all of that was, there's a lot of judgment in this room because I felt it before. But they obviously must know what they're talking about to judge, right? So I start the discussion, and then I had a slide up, and then I went to the talking points. I didn't go to the talking points to the next slide. I went to the talking points to the following one. I start talking, and I go to the next slide. I'm like, oh, wait, let me get to this, right? So I fixed it. I didn't think it was a big deal. And one of the executives, I remember, he was to my left. He says, Amy, the fact that you skipped that slide tells me you didn't think it was important. That stung. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I had other words going on in my head. I just felt the redness, the heat, right? And I said, it is absolutely important. And let's have a discussion about it. So I was like, but I was really shaken. I was really shaken. So I kept going. And then there was the moment where I wanted to state a recommendation to the room to get a discussion going. So I stated the recommendation, and another leader, different leader to my left, leaned back in his chair, and he says, Amy, be careful what you say. That crushed me. It was awful. It was an awful thing to say, first of all, right? So those are the moments where I seen, bad leadership. It closed the room. It closed me down, right? There were so many other ways they could have handled it. The first one could have just let it go. She's nervous, let it go. She's learning from this. The second one could have said something else, right? But at that point, I felt like it was this. I was standing on a trap door, and they pressed the button and said, "You're out," right? Seriously, felt that way. And at that moment, that is the introduction to the book, because it talks about, and it really relays the fact that exactly what I did. I went in feeling like I had to prove myself in that room. I went in believing confidence was comparing myself to other people and trying to rise to that level. And I've come to realize that is not it at all. When I'm leading from a place of proving myself, I'm overthinking, I'm not delivering my message effectively, and I can't effectively listen to the opinions and perspectives of other people because I'm so focused on what I think and what I want the result to be. So, yes, I want to do a good job, right? I want to be successful. But if I'm leading from proving, I'm not leading. And if I believe confidence is comparing myself to other people, I'm not leading from an authentic place. And I'm not leading from a place that I can contribute my unique value. I'm only leading from a place of where I lack. And that naturally does not convey confidence.
Never.
Doesn't. Yeah. And so we have these false beliefs of what we need, what each mean and what all of that. And that comes down to unseen leadership meant, what? I've realized that's not what it is. Confidence is actually me walking in and I'm not comparing myself to people. I'm walking in a way of, how do I move this room in conversation? How do I have this room leave different than when they came in? What is important to the people sitting around this table? And how can I show that it's important to me too? That I'm thoughtful about what they care about, right? Those are the things that's confidence. That comes with experience for sure.
Yeah.
But that comes with a knowing and a conviction and saying that to yourself every moment you're ahead of that meeting. Don't go in trying to prove yourself. What are you trying to prove? Versus, what am I trying to change? What am I trying to impact? Wow. What is the difference I want to make? And I often ask myself this too. What do I want these people to feel 6 months after this, 12 months after this? what's lasting because of our collective contribution that I was a part of, right?
Mm.
So that sets up the whole book of all kinds of things and all kinds of ways of thinking about why we get to the place we are. What the conditions we're born with for sure, the conditions that surround us as we grow up, as we enter our careers, and turning some things on its head to say, well, you believe these things are what's important. In fact, they are not, because we are living in a time that not only requires something more from us and something different, but particularly in the generation I'm in, we're responsible for building the leaders of our future. And that's requiring something different. So it leads into those types of things. But thank you for asking that, because that was the center of my thinking there, of leading from that experience and what it caused me to do for a while. I mean, I continued to edit myself quite a bit. I was very cautious. I didn't feel great. And then over time, I did learn from that.
If we can travel time together and meet you at that particular boarding room, I reckon that all the leaders walked out. You're gonna stay there for a minute or so after that, and you sit next to that Amy, and you talk to that Amy. So, what is that you're gonna talk to her?
Oh, wow. I love that question. I have not looked at it from that view before, and I love that. So what I'd say to Amy in that room is, these people have been where you are. They're no, they're just as human as you are.
Mm.
That they chose you to lead this and facilitate this conversation for a reason. Remind yourself of that reason. Lead from that place, right? I think those would be the initial things, because I think that probably would have, my nervous system was fired up quite a bit, which is a natural thing. Like if you're not nervous, there's something, of course you're going to be nervous, but how you
In that
regulate that,
situation.
right? How you
Uh-huh.
regulate and use that energy. It's not to remove it. How do you use that energy? And I think those are things that, um, I lead from today, that sitting next to her then would be that. After the meeting, it probably would have been a moment of compassion of, I know that was difficult. And it's okay that things get difficult. It's okay that you get tripped up in the moment. We don't always think on our feet when we need to.
Mm.
Because what I didn't want in that moment was somebody say, you should have done this, you should have done that.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that. You need somebody to give you some compassion and open the door to give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Because
Because
every
that,
single person sitting there has done something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was unseen for her back then also. So the process of learning, of
Yeah.
extracting all the lessons later on, you build a stronger, more resilient, more empathetic,
Yes. Yes.
adaptable, more curious Amy
Yeah.
in the way that she see herself, see other people, right? And that's how, leading you to write the book. That I have other
Yeah.
people to do that. Two last questions for this conversation. Okay. And my wife and I, we always love to help people to improve their ability to think. So, conversation like this is one of the best way for us to help, the people to pick up something that they can apply immediately. And so, for you and me, over the years, how have you been expanding your ability to think?
I read not just nonfiction, but fiction.
Hmm.
Because especially nonfiction, or I'm sorry, fiction rather. I'm sorry, I meant to say fiction, because it opens my creative mind and my visualization. that's been it for me, is reading.
Mm.
And I notice when I read, I enter back into work I'm doing, certainly with more energy, but with some clarity.
Mm.
I especially like to take a minute to read when I'm stuck on something or there's just a lot of just noise and negativity in my brain. I sit down and read something, and it does allow me to um, redirect my thoughts,
Mm.
and then I'm able to expand my thinking that way. And I just learn from reading too. It gives me ideas, and or I'm reading something like, oh, wait a minute, that's interesting because I'm dealing with this, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You see, you start with noticing something. You starting to notice your feelings, and you go back to reading, and then from reading, like I'll share with you the steps in the newness mindset. Okay, give me 1 second. So when you have the newness mindset, is one is start with notice one thing every day. All right. So embrace curiosity. From that new thing, what is that?
yeah,
How did you
yeah,
feel about that? Right. And then what your first step? On from what from something new that that you realize inside of you, outside of you. Then what first step from that learning to see what is that teach you. So go to the
yeah,
next step is navigate the discomfort, because everything new is we always have something like discomfort coming inside of us. The things that we're familiar with, the experts inside of us will tell us differently, right? And then the step after that is extract the learnings, like you mentioned, is where you learn the ideas from the new books that you read, the new, like paragraph that you read, some ideas that came up, you extract the lessons. The last two, and I want to ask the last question is about the one of the last two. The first letter S is sharing your stories, because we are the story we tell ourselves and we tell others, right? So the more we tell the stories, and the more that is becoming our new identity and the way we show it in the world. And the last one is really the significant one, is that you step into your new self.
mm,
And I want to bring you into the moment that you step onto many different new roles that you've been wearing, and you've been having the author, a coach, a mentor, an advisor, a lot of new things that the multiplier, put it that way. Okay. So what do you do to help you step onto your new self, the version that you believe is going to bring you a lot of good things and a lot of values for other people, a lot of good impact that that new self going to bring?
yeah. Well, I would first say I built belief in myself. I mean, I know that might sound simple and a little vague on how you build belief, but you build belief one thing at a time that you do that's hard. And so I will, and I will share the piece that I talk about in my book is stepping into your next self, as you say it. I relate to you're at your edge of familiarity. Your edge of familiarity is when you're kind of at this point, like you're feeling good, but you're sensing something different is expected from you, or you want to take a step to your next self, but you have fear. You're uncertain. You don't know how. And, growth begins at that edge. And we don't grow unless we cross that edge, unless we cross that moment. And that only happens when there's belief in yourself, not just belief that you can do it, but belief that coming out the other side, whether it works or not, you come out a stronger person. Um, and so I've been, as I think about that, it just reminds me of that place where I'm often at my edge of familiarity and I'm just hesitant to take a step. Um, how do I remind myself of the belief in what I'm doing?
Wow. Amy, thank you so much for this beautiful
You're welcome.
conversation. And you added it with belief, right? if we can have that good belief inside of you, the belief that help us to walk another
Yeah.
step, and our greater self is waiting there for us there. And we need along the way, if we can build the unseen leadership inside of us, right, we can
Yes.
get there a better person. And because of being a better person, we're becoming a magnet that other people will look and will want to follow. And I think it's a beautiful journey to become. So
Yes.
thank you for writing the book. Thank you for helping managers, leaders at all ages, at all level, to really look back at what is it that they don't see by themselves. What is the unseen things, right? And the things that they seen that make them successful. But absolutely, will if they can see the unseen things, maybe they can be more successful, more fulfilling, happier, and the world needs a lot of managers and leaders who are happier, who are more fulfilling, who are going to work because they want to do or contribute a better place instead of just going there for the sake of power and money. Right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all have ego. It's helpful to have ego because it motivates us, but for the less about our egos and more about how others experience us.
We love you, and
Right back
congratulations
at
on
you.
the book. Yeah, congratulations on the book, and I look
Thank
forward
you.
to sharing this conversation to our audience on LinkedIn, and also to seeing your family in Vietnam one day. Okay.
That's great. Yes, and I look forward to seeing it. And thank you again for having me. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you and have these conversations. I think we could talk for hours.
I know. Thank you very much. And
All
have a
right.
beautiful day there. Say hello to your family for me.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.